Information discussed in this podcast may be sensitive in nature to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Corey James Edkin was only 2 years old when he seemingly vanished in the middle of the night. Cory and his older sister had been put to bed by their mother earlier in the evening on October 12, 1986. Their mother, Debbie, had been living with another woman and her 2 sons in New Columbia, Pennsylvania. But something odd would happen that night. His mother would run out around midnight to fill up her gas tank and grab a pizza. She left Cory and his sister home sleeping, but the roommate was home with her 2 children at the time. Debbie came back home around 1 o'clock a.m. to find little Cory missing. All of the other children were accounted for, and aside from an open door, nothing else seemed amiss in the house. Authorities were promptly called, but when searches turned up no sign of the toddler, they determined that he must have been taken away from the area. Polygraphs were given, alibis verified, and possible witnesses were interviewed, but all that was uncovered was more questions. An alarming clue was discovered a few days after Cory vanished, and a person of interest did emerge. To date, however, Cory remains a missing person. Where is Corey James Edkin? Hello, and welcome back to the Where Are They podcast and another unsolved missing persons case, Missing Child. This will be another cold case spotlight for a little boy who vanished at just 2 years old. His disappearance has been labeled suspicious, but the lack of clues has truly been baffling in Cory's case. In fact, the only real clue detectives did have to work with is not a positive one and leads many to believe that Cory was possibly the victim of foul play. If you are here listening to Cory's story today, thank you so much for supporting our show and helping us continue to raise awareness of these unsolved cases. Cory's case is taking us back many years, 39 years as of the recording of this. But his story is devastating, and this little boy deserves to be found and deserves justice for his disappearance. These older cold cases are tricky to tell. It's harder to find certain information and even more difficult to verify anything that is found. But Cory's case needs to be told. So let's talk about what we do know. Corey James Edkin was born June 11th, 1984. He was the second child of Debbie Durr and James Edkin. They had a young daughter already who was about 2 years older than Cory. Shortly after Cory was born, however, Debbie and James split up. Their split was said to be amicable for the most part, and Debbie retained custody of the children. While there wasn't any wrongdoing on either party that was publicly stated or talked about, it was noted that James was not very active in the children's lives, at least for a while. In the fall of 1986, with Cory now 2 years old and his sister around 4, the children moved with their mom, Debbie, into a home with another mom and her children. Debbie and her roommate, Alberta, shared the home in New Columbia, Pennsylvania, and each of them had 2 children. New Columbia is a small town in central Pennsylvania. The population is just around 1,000 residents. Seems to offer up quite a quiet place to live for families. It is located right off of Highway 80, which can take you all the way to New York City to the east and Cleveland, Ohio to the west. Late on the evening of October 12, 1986, the children were all put to bed. Debbie would check on the kids once again around 11 p.m. and found them all sleeping peacefully. Debbie and Alberta stayed up for a bit watching television when Debbie remembered that she had to go get gas for the next day, and she said she was hungry. She wanted to go pick up something to eat. It was just after midnight when Debbie left the home. Debbie went to a nearby gas station and then grabbed a pizza, returning back to the home around 1 o'clock a.m. When she arrived at the home, she found the door open, and she thought that was odd because she was certain that she had closed it when she left. Alberta was still watching TV in the living room. When Debbie went up to check on the children, she found her daughter sound asleep, but Cory wasn't in his bed. Searches of the home turned up nothing, and Debbie panicked that perhaps maybe he had walked out that open door. Outdoor searches also turned up nothing, and concerned that it was now the middle of the night, it was pitch black outside, and Cory was only 2 years old, Debbie called the police to report her son as missing. Now, it is said that police did show up very quickly and were all hands on deck. It was a 2-year-old after all, and it was the middle of the night. Everyone took it very seriously, thinking that perhaps this boy had wandered off, perhaps was in danger, and they had to find him. Now, initial thoughts of law enforcement were just that little Cory might have left the home looking for his mother and exited out the door that perhaps had been left open. Maybe Debbie just didn't remember. Alberta must not have heard anything. They searched the entire area around the home. They brought in search dogs, heat sensing equipment, and even searched the nearby river for the boy. The dogs picked up no scent at all, and law enforcement found no additional clues. They changed their mindset now to believing that they were working with a potential abduction. They didn't feel the boy was in the area, and since no one had heard him leaving, they also felt that he might have left the home with someone that he knew. Debbie's story of going to the gas station that night and then to a convenience store to pick up a pizza was verified. Police said they were able to corroborate her story. Alberta was also given a polygraph test, to which she passed. She said she never heard anything or saw anything unusual. Detectives, of course, even checked up on Cory's father, James, and verified that he had been home in Muncie, Pennsylvania, the entire night. So who else could have taken the boy, and why? The home in which Debbie and the kids lived at was known to be that house in the neighborhood where everyone gathered at. In fact, some came out and took it a little bit further and called it a party house. On October 14th, 1996, almost 2 days after Cory vanished, law enforcement discovered a burn barrel in Debbie's backyard that contained some children's clothing, mostly burned, so charred remnants of children's clothing, and they also found the remnants of an adult man's jersey. The jersey, they learned, belonged to Henry Bush, an 18-year-old friend of Debbie's. Authorities learned that Henry had been at the home the night Cory disappeared. Henry said he had been working on Debbie's car when he accidentally spilled oil all over his jersey. That had happened several days ago. He said he tossed it in the burn barrel, knowing that there was no way to clean it, no way to salvage it. He claimed to be unaware of any other items in the burn barrel. Henry also told some conflicting stories that would keep him a person of interest in Cory's disappearance. Oddly enough, also in 1986, Cory's maternal grandmother, Merle, was arrested and charged with attempted murder at trying to poison her husband. Details of that trial are scarce, but she would go on to be acquitted of that crime. We don't know all of the family dynamics here, but Cory's father said that his main person of interest in his mind and the suspect in his son's disappearance was not Henry, but rather was Merle. To make things even odder in the story of Corey Edkin, let's fast forward to 2021. Merle was arrested again, and this time charged with murder, accused of poisoning her second husband and killing him. This time, Merle was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. She actually just passed away in prison behind bars. She definitely doesn't sound like the idyllic grandmother for sure, but she did stand to gain monetarily from the deaths of her husband. What would she have to gain for doing something to Cory, her 2-year-old grandson? Another strange story involving the family took place in 1999. Debbie's boyfriend at the time was a man by the name of Charles Burgess. He had been found murdered in his hotel room in New Jersey while he had been traveling there on a work trip. It seemed this family couldn't keep themselves out of the news. Now, the circumstances around Charles's death or Charles's murder aren't exactly clear, but while his death was ruled a homicide, it remains unsolved to this day. In 2024, now 38 years after Cory disappeared, Henry Bush was arrested and charged with obstruction in the case of Corey Edkin. He continues to proclaim his innocence, however. The conflicting stories he has told police have led to these criminal charges. Henry was sentenced to probation after pleading no contest. His reasoning for providing different stories, he just simply said he had no idea why he did that. In the years that have followed Cory's disappearance, the family also received several ransom calls regarding Cory. The last ransom call came in January of 1991. Those calls were never able to be traced, and the callers were never identified. It is very likely and very possible that these were prank calls from those in the area and the local region, perhaps, that knew the story. And sadly, that is a common occurrence in missing person cases. Of course, the burn barrel remains a question to this day also. That barrel did hold clothing remnants, but no sign of the little boy himself. No additional evidence was found in the burn barrel. So what do you think happened to little Corey Edkin? Did he meet with foul play? If so, where is he? Was he kidnapped and taken away from the area? If that's the case, Cory would now be in his 40s. Cory is described as a Caucasian boy with blonde hair and blue eyes. At the time he went missing, he was only 2 years old. There are age progression photos of him attached to his file with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Anyone with any information on the case of Corey James Edkin is asked to contact the Pennsylvania State Police at 717-742-8761. Thank you so much for listening to Cory's story today. Despite this happening almost 40 years ago now, let's not forget Corey Edkin and his story. He was only 2 years old when he disappeared. And despite having very little information out there about his story, about his case, little Corey Edkin deserves justice. Whether he is here with us or not, Cory needs brought home, and someone out there knows something. Of course, to those of you out there listening, thank you so much for being a supporter of our show, either on Patreon or as a subscriber. It really, truly helps us do what we do, which is to continue telling these stories. We will be back again very soon with another unsolved missing person story. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.